Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Live Pre-Race. Joe Samaniego here, along with Isha Azim from Racing with Isha and Joshua Birch from Joshua Birch Motorsports. Another eventful weekend, another weekend of racing in Japan. So everyone's time schedule a little off, but definitely one thing that's not off: the support from everyone at Patreon for the Grid Network. Colin Shell, Mark, Robin, David, Matthew, continuing to support us each and every month. You too can invest in the Grid Network. Click on the link in the video description. Once we get $500 a month, we can send folks to the track. And of course, you could do super chat now or buy me a coffee. And you could even make a donation contribution to a particular member of the Grid Network team. Greatly appreciate. I know Isha, Josh, I believe you both already gotten coffee in the past. Definitely be happy to see you guys get more coffee and encourage everyone watching. Also comment in the chat room. Isha, we got to start with the race I think that kept, well, depending where you were in the globe, up late or up early. Japan, MotoGP, and their Japanese Grand Prix.
Yes, Joe, starting with MotoGP. So the Japanese Grand Prix tomorrow sees a closer points battle for the lead. Jorge Martin took the win and Pecco Bagnaia came home third place. Now Jorge Martin starts on the pole tomorrow and Pecco Bagnaia is starting second next to him. Now Josh, we'll start with you for this question. Are the mind games coming into play and is this setting up a duel between the two?
Certainly, this was the first time we've really seen the two go head-to-head since Martin became a championship protagonist, and the start he got was amazing. I was under the opinion that the Ducatis were going to have bad starts because it's a short run down towards turn one, and they had the KTMs alongside of Binder and Miller. KTM's got a great getaway. But it was Bagnaia who, for the third start running, since the two starts in India plus now here in Japan, that he just never got away. The whole shot device on that Ducati didn't work, and he tumbled down the order. He was under attack from Marc Marquez, who dropped back later on in the race. But Martin took it and went for it as well. Bagnaia then had to pass Binder, who dropped back later on. Bezzecchi sort of went off again and never really had contention. And then he had to fight Jack Miller quite hard for second place. But apart from that, it was nothing really going in as well. So we've got Martin, Binder, Bagnaia, the top three separated by 3.8 seconds. And everyone was out there. I've got the timing results on my phone as well. They're all out there, hard front, soft rear. Now that soft rear tyre doesn't do well on the factory Ducati. We saw that back in the Indian sprint race. It's not the type that it likes because the Ducati, it's a rear wheel breaker. It likes having that grunt into the corner. But with Japan being so heavy on the front ends because it's got massive downhill slope braking zones, you have to run hard tyres at the front. Throughout the weekend, they've been struggling with tyre allocations, so they had to run soft tyres in the sprint to save a medium for the race. So going into tomorrow, I'm going to be expecting to see Bagnaia right up there with Martin and the two KTMs battling out for third place. So it's only part one, this story, but in the first part, Bagnaia's lost massively. The gap that was, 66 points coming in after the summer break is now down to 7 going into tomorrow. And Martin has outscored Bagnaia in the past 7 weeks by 55 points. Unbelievable. So mind games definitely coming into play. And let's not forget, Martin's doing all of this on a bike that's a year older than Bagnaia. So it's really impressive to see this. And we've got to have an interesting end to the title because Martin is on a roll. And once he gets in it, we saw it at Germany and Misano. If you take pole in the sprint, he'll win the feature. So that's a little bit of a thing about my pick a winner. But it's whenever he's on pole, he does it. So yeah, Martin could look strong for tomorrow.
Martin looks strong tomorrow, and overall, this is just shaping up to be a very exciting duel tomorrow between those two. Jorge Martin, he is on a new level. This is not the Jorge Martin from last year or his rookie season where it was really fast or he at least got a couple wins. He has the confidence to bring the fight. And as you mentioned, Josh, in a bike that's 1 year older, just amazing. And I think that a lot of folks are looking at just Ducati in general of what kind of bike they have. They seem to be fast week in and week out. Every year they seem to be fast. And you mentioned that surprise about the start. I thought it was going to be a weekend where we're going to see a little bit more competition. Hondas, Yamahas. Again, it's just all Ducati. They're just so good when it comes to their straight line speed, that whole shot device. And Jorge Martin, this is where I think it really gets fun because You now have the defending champion who seems to be playing more defense, trying to maintain the lead, hold that lead. Jorge Martin booming with confidence. He gets this win. He has that attitude. He could really bring the fight in. What is the Ducati team, the factory team, thinking about this, Josh, with seeing a rider on a bike that they had last year bring it to their championship leading driver when Bastianini, we all thought he was going to have at least a good season. It's been dreadful.
Well, the rumours going around this weekend is that Ducati know that they've got this title wrapped up, both in the constructors, the teams, and in the riders. It's only their guys who can do it across from Mooney VR46, Prima Pramac, and the factory Ducatis as well. So they know they've got it all lined up perfectly. But the one thing that they're saying at the moment, everyone's free to race, everyone's okay, and all is fair and all is well. But I can guarantee you, if it gets down to Valencia and Bagnar's got a shot to win the title, there will be some form of team order that comes through. You cannot have a junior team, let alone a customer team as well, which is what Prima Pramac and Mini VR46 is, embarrassing the factory Ducati team. It's the equivalent of Haas beating Ferrari in Formula One, the kind of level it is, or Alfa Romeo. It doesn't work. So I'm expecting all fair in love and war at the moment. And then as soon as we get to Valencia, when the title will be quite close, it's going to be like the opening 15 minutes of Saving Private Ryan.
It's going to be very interesting to see because, as you mentioned, I think Jorge Martin, he knows he has to push hard because, as you said, that last race, if he's a point behind within range, it's going to be Pecco Bagnaia again the championship. But if he could start pulling away, make it hard for the factory team to say, hey, Jorge, can you slow down and not finish the race so that way Pecco could? No, I think this is just really adds to the excitement of this. The factory team, they're hoping Pecco Bagnaia could put this all together, stay up front, build that lead up. And it comes down to the riders to do that. Jorge Martin, he could put the pressure. Oh my goodness, this is gonna, I think, set up to be what could be a classic. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about the factory team versus the satellite teams later on in the program.
Yeah, definitely, guys. And I think we're in for a really interesting battle tomorrow, as you guys mentioned. But now, turning towards a rider that everyone will be watching, we have Marc Marquez, because there is a big rumor around the industry that he will be leaving Honda. Now, this is Honda's home race, so many people are expecting an announcement to come out after the race weekend. And Marc Marquez will start 7th tomorrow, and he finished 7th today. Now, assuming the news comes out after this weekend, will this be one of the biggest changes in motorsports silly season? Joe, what do you think?
Easily, I feel this is one of the biggest ones, and not only this year, but I would say probably in the last 4 or 5 years, because we've never had in any sport, whether it's Formula One, where you had Michael Schumacher, seven-time champion, NASCAR with Jimmy Johnson, Dale Earnhardt, Richard Petty, they never left the team. They won 7+ championships to drive another team full time. Marc Marquez rumored to do this and to go to a customer team of Ducati. Is Marc Marquez really going to say, hey, I'm okay with just a year-old bike? Granted, the Ducati looks great. I think this is just going to be huge shockwaves for Honda because they just lose their star rider. A lot of people questioning about Repsol, which has been part of Honda for the longest time. I mean, I think even way back to the early 2000s, they've been on there. I think this is a big wake-up call, and I think really this is one of the biggest changes all of motorsports is going to see to have such a dominant rider driver switch and an interesting part when it comes to the grid ranking. None of the grid ranking champions have switched to another team just to race for their competition. Martin Truex Jr., his team folded up, so he went to Joe Gibbs Racing, but he won that championship with a technical alliance with them. So this is the first time anyone of the grid ranking world champions is essentially switching teams and to continue on racing in that same series full time.
Yeah, and there's a thing that's been going around this weekend is that let's not forget Marc Marquez does have a contract for 2024 with Repsol Honda and the LCR team. He is contracted to ride there for next season. So surely it would have been the best place to announce he was staying at Honda than here at the Japanese Grand Prix at Honda's home race. That hasn't happened. And for that not to happen, it was sort of the final nail in the coffin to confirm he is leaving and going to Ducati. Because if there was nothing to hide and nothing to deny, then why not just announce that it was a contract extension? He's going to be riding with the team next year. All's good. But no, it hasn't happened. It's nothing. It's been radio silence. We've had Mark saying, no, it's nothing's going to be announced this weekend. We've had Honda saying it's up to Marquez and Ducati what they do. And from what we understand, there's a lot of things going on right now. Is that we've mentioned throughout the broadcast about the year-old Ducati bike. Mark is not going to be on the factory Ducati because if he moves from factory Honda to factory Ducati, he incurs quite a large penalty in terms of both financial and sporting because you're not allowed to move directly from one manufacturer to the other. That's why if he is moving to Ducati, which we all know he is, he has to go via the customer team. And considering that Muni VR46 is owned by Valentino Rossi, and those two, yes, they were sort of, Valentino Rossi was Mark's idol. That all fell apart in Sepang 2015. So that door is well and truly shut with bolts, knocked right the way through it. So the only way he can go is Ganassi. Now, Ganassi has his brother, Alex Marquez, who's out at the moment with a rib injury. And it has a team whose owner passed away at the start of last year, who's now being run by his partner. The team, they're not really strapped for cash, but could do with an injunction of money. It's a good bike. It's a good team. It's front runners. And it's got what Mark wants. Now, Mark is apparently buying into the team. And he's going to be him alongside Alex. So it'll become like the Marquez brothers racing with them at Grenecci. We don't know anything else about that, but there's sponsors of Mark's that has got to move over if that's possible. There's the contracts with Honda that they've got to reorganize as well in terms of leaving. There's all the things like if you leave, are you allowed to test the bike straight after? And then there's another factor is that coming in as if Mark is on a year-old Ducati, are Ducati going to be happy with that? Is Mark going to be happy with that? Because why not you put him on a main team? And if it is that the case, that's more money for them to get the factory bike. Why doesn't Mini VR46 then have the 24 spec bike it would be? So there's loads of other things behind the scenes that have got to be dealt with before this is announced. And there's another factor that nobody's considered is the fact that if Marc Marquez does go there, how long is it for? Is it for a year and then he goes up to the main Ducati team? Or is it permanent? And is it going to become his own racing team? So there's so many questions, but we've never had this before. It is a first in MotoGP. Valentino Rossi has left Repsol Honda to go to Yamaha, and then he left Yamaha to go to Ducati, and then backwards. But that was always at the end of a contract period. We've never had a top-tier rider jump ship mid-contract because the bike is so bad. This is brand new territory, and it's coming with all sorts of problems as well. But mark my words, he is going to be on a Ducati next year. He will not be on a Honda. And I'm expecting it to be announced in Indonesia in a few weeks' time as well, once all this dies down, because there's no way he's going to stay at Honda. It would have been announced this weekend.
One of the things you mentioned, all the moving pieces, I can't imagine what Valentino Rossi is thinking if the rumors are true, that Marc Marquez is going to have an ownership role in a team with Ducati, essentially getting to the same equal equipment. I'm starting to wonder if maybe you won't be surprised if we're going to see maybe, somebody try to Aprilia approach VR46 like, hey, we'll give you something better if you come over here. I don't know if KTM will do that, but it's just something where Marc Marquez, as you brought up, him, Rossi, they're not the best of friends. They're not exchanging Christmas gifts. When we see this news coming out, the one thing I'm always thinking about with Marc Marquez, he's not going to settle for, okay, I'm with this team and I'm going to make sure the factory drivers have the support. He wants to go out there and win. He's going to cause mayhem. So it would be interesting if he does have this 1 year holding period before going to the factory team. But if he's going to have an ownership role, then I got to start wondering, do you think he's going to start pressuring, hey, we're a big team because I'm involved. I'm bringing sponsorship involved. We know he's bringing some sponsors over. Do you see it, Josh, where he could potentially pressure Ducati, like, give me more than just the year-old bike?
Oh yeah, this is Mark's going to go there, and like he did with Honda, it's Mark's way or the highway. So it's going to cause ruckus, and so many riders, Valentino Rossi, Jorge Lorenzo, Dovizioso, they've all gone to Ducati and struggled for a couple of years. Lorenzo struggled so badly he left and went back to Honda at the end of the contract period and struggled at Honda because Honda was so bad. And then, I don't know, Rossi succeeded but then struggled and went back to Yamaha. And we've just seen it time and time again, riders struggling with that Ducati. That was the old team, though. The new Ducati, they've finally got it right. They've got riders who can do it, and it looks the competitive bike. I mean, this year and last year, they've been dominating for 2 years now. And Honda, Mark, we've said this before, Mark said it as well. Mark left in 2020 after that crash in Jerez with a world championship winning motorcycle. When he came back, they destroyed it. And not much has changed in regulations in that time. So they absolutely destroyed what they did. But the question is, as well, as Mark said, you don't question the Japanese manufacturers. You don't. It's historical. They don't listen to Mark. They've gone their own way, and now they're not listening to him. So it's a bit like what is happening in Formula 1 with Hamilton and Mercedes. You've got a world champion there who knows your bike, knows your car, and they're not listening. So, yeah, it's a very difficult situation at the moment. But to be honest with you, with the way Honda's going, I don't see them being in MotoGP much longer. And that's an embarrassment to say, but I don't think they are, because Mark got through to Q2 by having to go through Q1. All of the Hondas were not in Q2 automatically at their home circuit. That was the embarrassment yesterday in practice and this morning in qualifying before we went sprinting. So there's a lot of action and interest coming in, but yeah, it's looking competitive again, and it's certainly keeping the silly season alive.
If we see Honda leave, we know this is rumors because of everything going on. We saw Suzuki left after 2 years after they won the championship. We know MotoGP, they seem to be a little bit lost when it comes to what's their mission. They introduced the sprint races, so now next year they're going to have 44 races combined with the sprints, the Grand Prix. We've seen some of the logistical issues. I'm surprised Kazakhstan is back on the calendar considering the race was canceled this year. Is like, if for the race fans there, great. If we'll love to see it, but can MotoGP pull it out? It just seems sometimes they're not exactly going the right direction. And with Honda, if they leave, that means I'm going to assume the Repsol money, that's a Spanish-based company. They might follow Mark, but they're not going to have that same investment of funding a full-time factory team. That's a lot of money, and I almost feel like MotoGP will probably start having a little bit of identity crisis when you have Suzuki left. Granted, Suzuki has come and gone before, but Honda, that'll be massive for the Japanese manufacturer to leave.
Yeah, and just to wrap up on that, MotoGP is having an identity crisis. They are so lost this year. They've regenerated themselves with the sprint races. I think they've been a success. Maybe a bit too many. I don't think they should be at every race. Few couple of them have been duds. Few couple of them have been brilliant. So that we need to, I think, cut back on what we have with that. But MotoGP is in real trouble with identity. It's getting a bit impossible for them. And there's a change every year because Carlos Espinosa is leaving and taking over. So it'll take a couple of years for it to settle. A bit like when Bernie left and Liberty came in. Just time for it to settle. But I've got a confident feeling it will bounce back. But they just need to get a good social team together.
Definitely, guys. That was some great insight. And, looking at tomorrow, we've got the Japanese Grand Prix, which will be early morning on the East Coast, and later tonight for you, Joe, in Alaska this weekend. And Josh, thank you so much for your time and for your great insight. But before you go, it's pick a winner for you. So we've got MotoGP and NASCAR at Talladega. Who are your picks?
Oh, MotoGP, you've got to go with Jorge Martin because every time he's been on pole position and won the sprint, he's gone on to win the Grand Prix. So I think he's got a good chance there. For NASCAR, it's quite hard to pick, actually, isn't it? Because it's been quite an interesting one to come into as well. It's so difficult. Well, we know Will Byron's into the round of 8. You're going to talk about that. Let's go Kyle Larson. Just throwing out there. That's a safety pick, isn't it? These days. I remember Joe did it all last year and it got him some decent points.
All right, Josh, and thank you so much. We've got a comment here from Adam. The 2024 MotoGP schedule is way too long. Yeah, Adam, I think a lot of us MotoGP fans agree with that, Some people might be enjoying it, though. But Anyways, Joe, let's hand it over to you now for the World Rally Championship.
Yeah, World Rally Championship, Rally Chile, it's underway. And this is another one where traditionally they're more in Europe. So again, the time zone differences. We got a couple stages left. Yesterday was the first day, and the big thing we saw was Escapekalapi ended stage one. Unfortunately, crashed, and he's out for the entire weekend. He was one corner away from completing the first stage, entered late braking, tried to cut the corner a bit more, hit the concrete block inside, rolled the car, out for the complete weekend. Tough break. He has now retired at two of the three last rally events. Big disappointment for him and the Hyundai team. For the Ford team, though, they have to be smiling ear to ear. Autonic, he leads the field by 4 seconds at the end of Friday's race. Stages. This morning, he is now leading by 47 seconds ahead of second place. So he has a clear advantage right now. Kali Rovanpera, the points leader, he's comfortably in fifth place. He's looking at just bringing it home, securing points because we know there's not a whole lot of time left for everyone to catch up to him. Elfyn Evans, the biggest person that could compete against him for the championship, fourth place. So only a one position difference between the two right now. There are still three more stages remaining today, and then tomorrow, four stages plus the power stage. Depending on what happens, Colorado from Para could potentially start looking at wrapping up the championship a little bit early, but still, Autonic, he'll love to get a win for that Ford team. He switched over to this team. It looked pretty fast, and he had a period where it just like nothing seems to go right. Penalties. This is the Autonic I was anticipating to begin the season, so it's really exciting to see him towards the front. Fortunately, he was not my pick of winner for the weekend. That was, I believe, Terry Newville, who was in third place. So still a lot could happen, but it's going to be really interesting. Rally Chile will wrap that up tomorrow when the race is completed.
Yes, Joe, and now it's time to shift gears towards NASCAR. So the NASCAR Cup Series has made it to Talladega. This is the last super speedway race of the 2023 season. Now, William Byron is the only driver who knows that regardless of the outcome today, he will be in Las Vegas to start the round of 8. Now, 11 others will try to secure their spot in the next round of the playoffs. And while qualifying has yet to start at this show's time, this is Talladega, which means that you can win this race from almost any starting position. Now, Joe, what do you think are some key indicators of a good chance at winning at Talladega?
Some key indicators I'm looking at. While we know the nature of Talladega, you can win from just about any position. If you're within the top 20, you're off to a good start. Yes, we know the draft is the most important part of the race. So if you're 21st, 22nd, you can still work your way to the front. But the last time we had a driver from outside the top 20 win a race at Talladega, that was in 2014. Guess who that was? Denny Hamlin from 34th position. So it can be done, but it's not done frequently. So I'm looking at somebody that's going to qualify in the top 20. I'm also going to be looking at where are there not only the teammates, but the manufacturer support. We know Toyota, there's a fewer Toyotas compared to the Chevrolets and the Fords. They're going to want to have all their Toyotas together, especially when it comes to the green flag pit stops. That's where their weakness is. There's so few Toyotas. If they get spread out, if they have it where some could not get into pit road on time, they're going to fall behind if the Fords and the Chevrolets stay out, or they pit first and they just have that momentum to catch up and blow past them. So the manufacturer support, your teammates, you're going to have all of them towards the front. It's no help if you're going to be one or two Toyotas in the top 10 and everyone else towards the back. So that's going to be the second big thing. And the third indicator I'm looking at when it comes to Talladega is qualifying and where you're going to be starting up. Top 10s is always great because here's the thing. If you're towards the front, most likely you're not going to be in the mess of the big one. The big one can happen anywhere, but quite often we do see it happen towards the front. I will say this. I don't anticipate we're going to have a big one occurring in that first stage. So that first stage, I think it's going to be really calm. It is the second and the third stage, Isha. I think we're going to start seeing everyone pushing it. If for some reason we have a caution during the first stage and it gets towards the end of stage one, that's where it's going to get a little dicey, I think, because now you got everyone all jammed up together. But overall, those are some of the indicators. You want to start in the top 20 for sure. You want to have teammates, have manufacturers support around you, and qualifying. Because still, You could qualify dead last. Yeah, you could still win, but it has not happened in a long time. Qualifying is a big one.
That's right, Joe. And as I mentioned, William Byron has no concerns today. He is in the round of 8. Now, however, 20 stage points, including a playoff point, are on the line. So, what strategy do you anticipate Byron and the 24 team to utilize?
The strategy I think the 2014 are going to be looking at, they know they got enough playoff points once it resets, most likely to be within the first top 2 positions. They entered the round of 16, the round of 12, with Martin Truex Jr. as the top 2. They got the most wins out of anybody this season. So William Byron, I think he's going to have the ideal strategy where he could go into this race weekend. If he qualifies towards the front, you're going to see him try to win stage 1. If he's mid-pack or further back for some reason, which I'll be shocked because Hendrick Motorsports are always pretty fast in the restrictor plate super speedways type of races where you have the big pack, I'm going to be looking at him falling towards the back, sacrificing the stage points, and trying to go for the win because he knows if he gets that win, that is more playoff points that is going to guarantee him from the round of 8 to the round of 4. That's the big thing he needs is the playoff points. You could get them in the stages. Sure, that's a great way, but you don't want to be caught up in the big one if it occurs at the end of stage 2 and you're now missing out on some big playoff points and you have a driver like Martin Truex Jr. So William Byron, I think he's going to, if he's mid-pack and towards the back, you're going to see him towards the back, taking it easy, because at the end of the day, those playoff points is what he really needs. You're going to get the most of them when you finish the race, not the stages. I don't see William Byron potentially risking himself falling further behind 4th place as we get the reset for the round of 8. I know he's going to be up towards the front. Rudy Fugle is probably going to be telling him the situation up there too. Like, if Martin Truex up towards the front, take it easy because we think there's going to be a big one at the end of the stage. And if that all occurs, he could really put everybody in trouble. Can you imagine William Byron wins 2 in a row and now everyone has to enter the Roval essentially in a must win, especially if you're within the playoff cut line or worse, you get caught up in the big one and you fall below. This could be a chaotic race round, but for William Byron, he controls the strategy. He controls his destiny in this race. He's in a really good spot, and I will not be surprised, honestly, if he comes out swinging at the round of 8 race in Las Vegas and takes the win and goes to the championship 4.
That's right, Joe. And I know that you and I have yet to pick a winners for NASCAR, but one driver that many are picking as the potential winner is Bubba Wallace. Now, he has won here in the past, and he almost won last weekend as well. However, ahead of him, Brad Keselowski is the favorite to win. Many have pointed to his past successes, the rise of RFK racing, and this renewed confidence in both drivers. So, Joe, which driver do you see more likely to bank on past successes here, Bubba Wallace or Brad Keselowski?
I'm looking at Brad Keselowski, which I'm surprised I'm saying, to be honest, because 1 year ago, I would not have been saying Brad Keselowski. RFK, we know it's their first year. Nothing eventful occurred, really, besides the surprise win at Bristol Motor Speedway. But this year, Brad Keselowski, that organization has really come up from race wins, getting some great performances here and there at tracks we thought they were going to be in trouble. And Brad Keselowski, I think, has that renewed confidence, and this is a track he likes. He knows how to win here. Besides the controversial finish with him, Carl Edwards, there was that great move on the last lap where he broke the draft from Kyle Busch, who was second place, preventing Kyle from getting a challenge to him. Brad Keselowski, I think, has a good chance of winning this race. I know a lot of folks on the Sirius XM morning drive have been saying the storm's coming every time Brad Keselowski is in the mix. I do see the storm coming here at Talladega. I think Brad Keselowski has a great shot of winning. Last time Bubba Wallace won here, a storm did show up. We had rain, so it was rain shortened, but he had a fast car. He still has a fast car. I think he still has the confidence. Yes, he was hard on himself last week for the loss, saying he choked, but I feel he's really good at now putting that behind him, going out, getting the win. The big thing, he needs to have Toyotas in front and around him, because if he's the only Toyota surrounded by Fords and Chevys, he's in trouble. The Fords, I see the Fords, especially since you don't have Logano, Cindric, McDowell in it, they could really help RFK race and the other Fords of Chris Buescher, Ryan Blaney get the win. So I'm leaning towards essentially Brad Keselowski. The storm's coming, as I said.
Yes, Joe, I totally get it. And, something you mentioned a few times in your previous answers was the big one. Now, I'm going to talk about the big one here as if it's Godzilla because it can strike and take out anyone, regardless of how well or how not well they're running. Now, we've seen some races here where the big one is more than 15 cars and the race calms down. However, we have also seen an increase in crashes involving between 4 to 9 cars, maybe even 10, and more similar sized crashes occurring throughout the race. Now, we know that the superspeedway racing is one of the more intense and dangerous forms of racing. So, is the big one part of the risk of the superspeedway racing, or does it tarnish NASCAR when you have multiple wrecks prolonging the race?
This is a hard question to answer because we know with superspeedway racing, as you mentioned, this is one of the most dangerous events in the NASCAR calendar. And even before we entered the era of restrictor plates, we still had some significant crashes. We got restrictor plates because of Bobby Allison's crash at Talladega, which I see Adam mentions. Don't forget, Brad Keselowski won his first ever race at Talladega. And we all remember Carl Edwards flew into the catch fence. Thankfully, that catch fence was there, so he didn't go into the crowd. That was the type of crash we had with Bobby Allison that brought the restrictor plates in. Slowed the cars down, but now you have these big packs. Visually, they're a great spectacle to look at, but one car makes a mistake. We've seen cars like Mark Martin get airborne, Rusty Wallace go flipping end over end, Ken Schrader has gone upside down. We've seen big ones occur where it just takes out 20 plus cars. I believe it was 95 or 96 when Dale Earnhardt hit that outside wall, collected Sterling Marlin, a bunch of cars, and then you only had 12 cars left remaining in the spring race here. Overall, Talladega, the risk of the big one, I think, is just part of the sport. You're going to have it whether it's going to be without the restrictor plates, with the restrictor plates. Now we're in an era where we don't have the restrictor plates, but we still have these pack racing. I just see this is just part of the game. When we have these somewhat big ones where you have 7, 8 cars, they crash, okay, re-rack, let's get going again. I don't think it gets too crazy or starts to tarnish the race until we get towards the end and it's like, okay, we have 10 laps to go, but it's going to take us 30 minutes because every restart we have another crash. We have endless overtimes. At that point, I think it not only gets frustrating for the drivers and the teams because they got overtime, they want to make sure they don't run out of gas. I think at a certain aspect for the fans too, because at the end of the day, you want to see a race. Talladega, while it's known for the big one, we don't want to see something like a Bristol product or an old Bristol product, since we don't get a Bristol with 10 plus cautions annually as we used to back then. Talladega is built for speed. It was built to be the fastest racetrack in the world. The cars are still fast there. The spectacle of seeing 30 plus cars, less than a second, bumper to bumper, is great. The big one, a big crash, that's just part of the game when you have this kind of scenario. We even seen this in sort of Formula E in Portland when they just had a pack race and we didn't see a big crash. That doesn't mean it's not part of it. It just means we didn't have it. We've had races in Talladega without the big one. People will say, well, it was still a good race because those occurred when we were before the stage caution, so we didn't have stage breaks. 2 caution-free races at Talladega since I believe 1995. I could see that happening again if we didn't have the stages, but with the stages, you know you're going to have a couple restarts that's going to bunch everybody back up together again. And I think everyone just got to accept that this is part of the racing. There's going to be a big one. Hopefully we don't get to the point where it starts to look ridiculous towards the end and we have 3 or 4 overtimes because they just keep crashing with 2 laps to go.
That's right, Joe. And we know that with speed comes danger and risk, and that's a big factor at Talladega either way. However, in the end, with the playoffs going on, the next race is the Charlotte Roval. We do not have that big point spread among the playoff drivers where someone can point their way to the round of 8. But what would set up a driver to be able to breathe easier at the Roval after Talladega?
If you want to enter the Roval in a good spot where you're not stressed out, do what Denny Hamlin's doing right now. He is plus 37. If you could be plus 30 entering the Roval, you're in a good spot because at the end, there's 20 stage points, 10 max from each stage. So if you're at 30 or more, you cannot be caught up that way. Then it comes down to where you are in that final position. Really, I feel this almost dictates what kind of strategy you're going to have in the Roval. Let's take Christopher Bell. He's right now plus 22. If he enters the Roval at plus 35, he could go out there and try to get stage one, get the 10 points. He's now at plus 45 before you factor in the finishing positions. He's in a really good spot to finish in the top 8 of the playoffs, regardless what happens, unless he crashes out the next lap and finishes dead last. But then he really controls his destiny. If you're Kyle Larson at plus 2 even, if you were to get 20 points the 2 stages, and then let's just say, another, and you're at plus 30, one stage win, you're at plus 40, you're in a really good spot. So really, this race almost dictates the strategy of entering the next race weekend when it comes to the points. Because at the end of the day, if you're below the cut line or you're with less than 20 points, you're really at risk of getting caught up in a mess at the Roval. We've seen drivers go off and the heartburn turn. I don't remember the name of it exactly. Tom's heartburn turn. That was it. Now it's the Walt Tough corner or something like that. But the big thing is this: 30 points or more, I say, is a good spot to be in. Because at 20 points or less, it only takes 2 stages at the Roval or 20 positions at the end of the race, and you could be out of the playoffs. So the big thing is getting those stage points today if you need it. If you're William Byron, you don't need it. At the end of the day, the fans, I think they're going to be in for a great race at Talladega as usual.
That's right, Joe. Stage points are going to be crucial here. And Talladega, the second race of the round of 12. Now, with everything we've mentioned, we know that there's going to be a lot to look out for the race. And with that, let's move over to our final segment of the show, Pick a Winner. So, Joe, will be starting with MotoGP. Who is your choice for Pick a Winner?
MotoGP, I'm going to go with Jorge Martin. I feel he has a new level of confidence. And the big thing I almost feel, especially with Pecco Bagnaglia's pass, and now lately with Pecco crashing, I think he almost has the advantage when it comes to the mind games, where if Pecco has the lead, he could just ride in the wings, push him, and potentially crack or just save his equipment and get around him towards the end. Jorge Martin is my pick for MotoGP.
All right, Joe, and now we'll look at NASCAR. Who's your pick for NASCAR?
NASCAR, I'm going to go with the Storm. I say the Storm's coming. It's going to be Brad Keselowski. He's going to get the win. It'll be a huge shock to everyone that a year ago we would not be saying Brad Keselowski, but Brad Keselowski, he is my pick.
You took mine, Joe. That's what I was going to say, too. I'm going to go with Brad Keselowski, and I hope we see that happen and get our points because I really do need some points on that leaderboard.
Everyone's trying to get to Alex. It really amazing to see what he's doing. Adam, Jorge Martin, and Brad Keselowski. Wow, we're just all... We need to pick 7th place for today, I feel, for picking 7th place in Talladega. That's going to be harder than F1 any day. But we encourage everyone, be sure to comment in the chat, especially with your pick of winners. If you're not watching us live, support us through Patreon. Colin, Show, Mark, Robin, David, Matthew, they all invest in us each and every month. They're helping us pay the bills, get to the track, plan for 2024. We're wanting to be at the track much more frequent. And Buy Me a Coffee YouTube Super Chat right there in the chat room. If you're watching us post live, you could always hit the thanks button. And of course, if you want to give a cup of coffee super chat to a particular member of the Grid Network team, be sure to mention it, who it's going towards, and we'll forward it to them. Social media, hit the bell icon. Don't miss any of our programs. You can subscribe, but if you miss some of our programs, you're going to be watching us not live. You can engage with us in the chat room. So I highly encourage, hit the bell icon. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, now X. We're there, Grid Ranking, and of course in the video description, be sure to click on the links to all of our Grid Network team's YouTube channel, Racing with Isha, Joshua Birch, and everybody else. For Isha Azim from Racing with Isha, I'm Joe Samdiego. Thank you for watching today's episode. We'll see you next time, and enjoy the races. Thank you for watching us right here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe
check out some of our other videos, including Life on the Grid, where we interview folks from the motorsports industry. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.